What makes us human? Is it our capacity for empathy, our ability to reason, or perhaps something more fundamental? Throughout history, we've grappled with these questions in philosophy, literature, and art, but these abstract ponderings become devastatingly concrete in moments of crisis. When survival is at stake, when trust becomes a luxury we can't afford, how quickly does our humanity begin to unravel? These questions lie at the heart of No, I Am Not a Human, a haunting new horror game in a world teetering on the edge of apocalypse. The sun is exploding, scorching the earth with unbearable heat, and mysterious visitors have begun emerging from underground, wearing human faces but harboring unknown intentions. As society crumbles, you become a gatekeeper, forced to distinguish between genuine survivors and these inhuman imposters, all while knowing that a single mistake could mean death for everyone under your roof. Released as part of the Violent Horror Stories anthology on Steam, this demo offers a chilling glimpse into what could be one of the most thought-provoking horror games of 2025. Developer Trioskaz has crafted a unique experience that blends psychological horror with moral complexity, crafting something that feels both timely and timeless in its examination of human nature under extreme pressure. What sets this game apart is its unflinching look at how quickly society can fragment under pressure. In a world where the sun itself has become an enemy, where FEMA workers in hazmat suits patrol the streets, and where neighbors can transform into threats overnight, the game forces players to confront uncomfortable truths about survival and sacrifice. The simple act of checking someone's teeth or examining their fingernails becomes laden with terrible significance, as these mundane details could mean the difference between sheltering a survivor or inviting destruction into your home. The demo version introduces us to a cast of complex characters, each bringing their own stories, traumas, and potential threats to your door. From a grieving widow who refuses to leave her husband's corpse behind, to a little girl who may have witnessed horrors beyond comprehension. Every encounter forces players to question not just the humanity of others, but their capacity for trust and compassion in a world that increasingly punishes both. Through its unique blend of point-and-click mechanics and psychological horror, the game creates an atmosphere of suffocating paranoia that feels unnervingly relevant to our modern world. In an era where trust in institutions is wavering and social bonds are increasingly strained, No, I Am Not a Human asks us to consider how much of our humanity we're willing to sacrifice in the name of survival. The demo, which we'll be exploring today, presents just a fraction of what the full game promises to deliver. With 12 potential guests in the demo version, compared to the planned 54 in the final release, we're seeing only the beginning of what this narrative has to offer. Yet, even this small sample raises profound questions about trust, survival, and the price we're willing to pay to maintain our humanity, even in the face of overwhelming horror. Before we dive deeper into the game's mechanics, narrative, and themes, I want to acknowledge that this analysis focuses solely on the demo version. We'll certainly return to examine the full release when it arrives in April 2025, as there's clearly much more to uncover in this fascinating world. If you find this analysis interesting, consider subscribing to join us for that future discussion. You can also follow us on Twitter for updates and behind-the-scene thoughts, or support us on Patreon or join the channel for early access to future videos and a voice in choosing upcoming topics. Your support helps us continue creating in-depth analysis of fascinating games just like this one. Now let's dive into the unsettling world of No, I Am Not a Human, and explore how it challenges our assumptions about trust, survival, and what it truly means to be human. No, I Am Not a Human places you in a world where the familiar has become deadly. The sun, once a source of life, now scorches the earth with unbearable heat, forcing humanity to reverse its natural rhythms. People huddle indoors during the day, emerging only at night when the deadly rays have temporarily retreated. But the sun isn't the only threat in this transformed world. The game takes place entirely within the confines of a single house, where you, the protagonist, have become an unwitting gatekeeper for humanity. Your home becomes a microcosm of society's collapse, with different rooms serving as makeshift shelters for your guests. The living room, kitchen, and even bathroom becoming territories where survival and suspicion intertwine. Each night brings new fears to your door. These encounters happen in darkness, with only your porch light illuminating desperate survivors seeking shelter from both the devastating heat and mysterious creatures known as visitors. Entities that have begun emerging from underground, wearing human faces but harboring unknown intentions. The timing of these nocturnal visits isn't random. FEMA's patrols and other, more sinister figures move through the darkness according to their own unsettling patterns. Your role is deceptively simple but morally complex. You must decide who to let into your home, but more crucially, you must determine who among your guests is truly human. The game provides you with a set of identification methods that become increasingly unnerving as you understand their implications. Checking people's teeth for unnatural perfection, examining their fingernails for dirt and damage, looking for bloodshot eyes, and taking photographs that might reveal disturbing anomalies. Each method feels invasive, degrading even, forcing you to question whether the very act of verification is stripping away something essential about humanity. The gameplay revolves around a meticulously structured day-night cycle that creates a rhythm of tension and investigation. At night, you face the crucial decision of who to admit into your sanctuary. Your choices here are complicated by what you might glimpse through your windows. Military personnel, FEMA workers, or sometimes more troubling figures moving in the darkness. During the day, you must manage your energy while checking on your guests, trying to determine if you're inadvertently allowed a visitor into your home. An energy bar system adds another layer of strategic depth. You need to carefully choose when to investigate and when to rest, as you can't fall asleep until your energy is depleted. This creates a fascinating tension between the need for vigilance and your character's human limitations. Beer becomes both salvation and curse, a way to deplete energy when needed, but at what cost to your judgment? The consequences of your decisions ripple through the game in unexpected ways. If you fail to identify and eliminate visitors, they will kill your human guests. But the deaths aren't always immediate or obvious. The game forces you to live with the weight of your mistakes, as bodies appear in rooms and whispers grow louder. But the moral weight of these choices is complicated by the presence of FEMA, government workers in yellow hazmat suits who periodically visit to take away guests for testing. Their arrival brings its own form of horror, the legal bureaucratic kind that feels disturbingly familiar. If you don't maintain a minimum number of guests, you risk a visit from the Intruder, a terrifying figure whose appearance becomes increasingly sinister and knowing. His visits serve as both punishment and revelation, though exactly what he reveals may differ with each encounter. The demo version features 12 potential guests, each with their own stories, personalities, and possible roles. From the haunting presence of a little girl seeking her father, to a woman who refuses to leave her husband's corpse, each character brings their own layer of moral complexity to your decisions. This system of identification, combined with the energy management mechanics and the constant threat of both internal and external dangers, create an atmosphere of suffocating paranoia. Every interaction becomes laden with suspicion, every conversation potentially hiding clues to someone's true nature. Small details, a misplaced comment, an odd reaction, a strange sound from a supposedly empty room, take on enormous significance. The game forces you to question not just the humanity of others, but how your own humanity might erode under the constant pressure of suspicion and survival. The narrative of No, I Am Not a Human unfolds like a dark stage play, with your home as the theatre and each night bringing new actors onto your doorstep. The story begins deceptively simple, with a visit from your neighbour that serves as both tutorial and harbinger of the horrors to come. Through him we learn the basic rules of this new world, the scorching sun, the mysterious visitors, and the desperate need for shelter that drives people to your door. What makes the narrative particularly compelling is how it builds its horror through accumulation rather than sudden reveals. Each new guest brings their own story, their own perspective on the catastrophe unfolding outside, and their own potential threat to the fragile safety you're trying to maintain. The game masterfully weaves together individual character arcs with the broader mystery of the visitors and the slowly revealing truth about FEMA's role in this crisis. Let's examine how this narrative unfolds, looking at key moments that shape our understanding of the world and its inhabitants. What begins as a simple story of survival quickly reveals itself to be something far more complex and unsettling. Our story begins in stillness, interrupted by knocking at our front door, a sound that will come to carry both hope and dread in the nights ahead. The first visitor is the neighbor, and through him we receive our introduction to this transformed world. His warnings paint a picture of reality unraveling on two fronts. The sun itself has become a deadly enemy, scorching the earth with unbearable heat, while mysterious visitors have begun emerging to hunt the surviving humans. Rather than leave after delivering this dire news, he takes shelter in our cabinet, an action that seems odd in the moment but sets the tone for the desperate measures people will take to survive. The following morning brings our first taste of the authorities' response to this crisis, though it only deepens the mystery. A weather forecast acknowledges the extreme temperatures but attempts to normalize them, assuring listeners that it's perfectly safe to go outside and dismissing concerns about strange behavior as mere reactions to the heat. This official denial of obvious danger creates an immediate sense of institutional gaslighting that will become a recurring theme. During your first full day, our neighbor introduces us to the energy system that will govern our actions throughout the game. It's a seemingly mundane explanation. You can use energy to talk to people, or drink beer to deplete it and go to sleep. But it establishes the resource management that will force difficult choices in the days ahead. As night falls again, we begin to see the wider world through your windows, each view offering a different glimpse of this strange new reality. Our neighbor's house sits with lights on and windows open, as if awaiting his return. In a nearby field, teenagers continue their games despite the late hour, having adapted to the nocturnal rhythm this crisis demands. And then there's the empty road, a reminder of how many have already fled or fallen. The night brings 3 visitors to our door. First comes our neighbor's daughter, seeking her father. This reunion marks a moment of seeming normalcy. You let them both leave together, watching as they return to their illuminated house across the way. The second visitor is a man clad in a white shirt, recently expelled from a bar that had been serving as his shelter. Despite his seemingly volatile temperament, we make the decision to let him in, marking our first real commitment to harboring survivors. The final visitor of the night presents a more unsettling figure. Someone with strangely distorted proportions, their shoulders sitting unnaturally high. Something about their appearance triggers enough concern that we turn them away to the darkness. It's our first rejection of a potential survivor, and as you return to bed, the weight of these choices, who to shelter, who to cast out, begins to settle in. These decisions made in the dark of night will come to define our role in this crisis. Day 3 marks a sharp escalation in both official acknowledgement of the crisis and visible evidence of the horror unfolding outside our walls. The morning begins with another weather forecast, but this time his tone has shifted dramatically. Gone is the previous day's attempt to normalize the situation. Instead, the reporter speaks urgently about a powerful solar energy eruption, acknowledging that air temperatures have reached critical levels. A state of emergency has been declared, and citizens are explicitly warned to avoid daylight hours. A complete reversal of the previous day's assurances about outdoor safety. More significantly, the broadcast finally addresses the elephant in the room, the visitors. The report attempts to provide guidance for identifying these entries, showing diagrams that suggest their faces appear slightly off compared to normal humans. It's advice that proves frustratingly inadequate. In a world where fear and exhaustion have already begun to distort everyone's appearances, such subtle distinctions offer little practical help. During the daylight hours, we focused on investigating our sole guest from the previous night, the man in the white shirt who had been expelled from the bar. This marks our first real experience with the visitor identification process, checking for the telltale signs while engaging him in conversation. The process is invasive, degrading even, but he proves to be human. But your relief at this discovery is tempered by the knowledge that you'll need to repeat this process with every future guest. As night falls again, your window checks reveal how quickly this world is deteriorating. The first view offers a moment of seeming normalcy. Your neighbor and his daughter playing outside their home, having adapted to the nocturnal rhythm this crisis demands. but the second view shatters any comfort that might have provided. The teenagers we saw playing in the field the previous night now lie dead, their bodies evidence of brutal violence. Through the third window you spot what appears to be their killer, a shirtless man standing ominously in the road, his appearance noticeably off in ways that suddenly make the morning's broadcast warnings feel much more relevant. The night brings 3 distinct visitors to our door. First comes a homeless woman in a jacket, her arms crossed protectively across her chest. Despite the heat, she refuses to remove her jacket, but something in her demeanor or desperation convinces us to grant her shelter. The second visitor, a bearded man in a dirty white shirt, speaks in grandiose, conspiratorial terms about the sun's role in cleansing the old world to make way for the new. His unsettling rhetoric prompts you to deny him entry, a decision that provokes his anger but ultimately leads to his departure. The final encounter of the night stands out for its strangeness. This visitor doesn't seek shelter at all, instead delivering cryptic passages before vanishing into the darkness. It's an encounter that suggests there's more to this crisis than simply finding safe harbor from the sun and the visitors. Some deeper mystery playing out in the shadows of this transformed world. The day ends with new guests under our roof, and new questions about the nature of the threats that we face. The simple binary of human versus visitor has already begun to blur, complicated by the realization that dangerous ideology and strange behavior might pose their own kind of threats to our sanctuary's stability. Day 4 marks a dramatic shift in both the information available to us and the consequences of our role as gatekeeper. The morning news broadcast finally provides concrete details about identifying visitors. They possess unnaturally perfect white teeth, and many have dirt beneath their fingernails from crawling out of the ground. The broadcast also announces the arrival of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, suggesting some semblance of official response to the crisis. Armed with this new information, we begin inspecting our guests. The man in the white shirts reveals stained, imperfect teeth, a reassuring sign of his humanity. But when you check the homeless woman, the truth becomes horrifying. Behind her lips gleam perfect white teeth. In this moment, the game forces you to act on your suspicions. Your double-barreled shotgun rises, and in a terrible instant, you make your first kill. Her body crumbles onto the living room sofa, the corpse blurred out, but its presence a permanent reminder of what you've become capable of. Night brings new horrors. Our Windows checks reveal an escalating government presence. FEMA agents in hazmat suits surround our neighbor's house, while others stand over the now burned corpses of the teenagers from previous nights. The third window reveals a group of soldiers discussing a pale, shirtless man, a conversation that will prove grimly prophetic. This night brings our first encounter with the figure who will come to be known as the Intruder. He appears at our door wearing an unnaturally wide smile filled with perfect teeth. His questions seem simple. Is everything okay? And are you alone? But they carry terrifying weight. This entity somehow knows the truth, regardless of your answer. If you were alone, or if you lied about having company, he would lure you to your death. Only the presence of genuine human guests saves you from this fate, though he leaves with an ominous promise of return. The night continues with 3 more guests, each bringing their own form of desperation to your door. First comes the widow, a woman bearing the literal weight of loss, her dead husband's body strapped to her back. Her request for rest comes with the heavy knowledge that she refuses to abandon her husband's corpse to the sun. You grant her shelter, adding her grief to our home's growing collection of trauma. Next arrives a man wearing a shirt bearing the word Amukas. His nervous energy and forced positivity creating an unsettling contrast. Despite his strange behavior, we allow him in. Finally, an elderly surgeon appears, speaking with gentle kindness about the collapse of safety in hospitals. His offer to help others seems genuine, and you grant him entry, his medical knowledge potentially valuable in these desperate times. Each of these decisions carries new weight after your encounter with the Intruder and your first execution of a visitor. The simple act of opening our door has become a complex calculation of risk and morality, each new guest representing both potential salvation and possible doom. As you return to bed, our home has become a microcosm of this fractured society, housing grief, desperation, and perhaps more visitors waiting to be discovered. The next morning's broadcast reveals further developments in the official response to the crisis. FEMA announces the establishment of quarantine zones for what they carefully term visitors, though they're quick to frame these entities as merely ill individuals rather than anything supernatural or alien. This messaging represents another attempt to normalize the increasingly abnormal situation, even as they provide a new identifying characteristic: blood red eyes, which they attribute to extreme sun exposure. Armed with this additional criteria, we begin our daily inspection of guests. The man in the Amogus shirt presents with notably red eyes, presenting us with our first real moral dilemma since executing the women with perfect teeth. Despite this warning sign, we choose mercy over suspicion, a decision that weighs heavily given our recent encounter with a confirmed visitor. The official explanation of sun exposure offers a plausible alternative to visitor status, but the doubt lingers. Our examination of this elderly surgeon reveals another curiosity. He possesses dual pupils in one eye. While not listed among the official visitor characteristics, this physical anomaly adds another layer to the game's exploration of human variation versus visitor identification. Here, the game deliberately plays with our growing paranoia, presenting physical differences that feel unsettling but don't align with the official signs of visitor infiltration. As we retire for the night, these encounters underscore a growing truth. The binary distinction between human and visitor is becoming increasingly blurred. The surgeon's condition and our choice to spare the red-eyed man represents the moral complexity of our role as judge and potential executioner. Each new piece of information from officials seems to make our task both clearer and more morally ambiguous. Night falls, and with it comes the familiar knock at our door. But before answering, our ritual window check reveals how dramatically the situation has deteriorated. Our neighbor's house, once a beacon of normalcy with its lights and open windows, now burns against the night sky. The responsible party remains unclear, though the visitors are the presumed culprits. This burning house serves as a grim milestone, the final destruction of the ordinary world we glimpsed on that first night. The second window reveals an even more horrific sight. The intruder, the same pale man who had tested us at our door the previous night, now stands triumphant, holding a soldier's decapitated head still nestled in its helmet. Through the third window, the rest of the military unit on the road lies butchered, a stark demonstration of both the intruder's lethal capabilities and how ineffective traditional authority has proven against this threat. The scene takes on additional weight given our own encounter with the entity, knowing that only the presence of human guests had saved us from a similar fate. The night's first visitor represents a new evolution in authority, a FEMA agent, but notably different from his colleagues. Unlike the other hazmat-suited figures we've seen, this one carries a gun slung over his shoulder, a detail that feels significant in ways that will only become clear later. He announces himself as part of the FEMA crew, explaining that he needs to take one of your normal humans for observation and rehabilitation, citing concerns about solar radiation. His promise to return if initial analysis deems it necessary carries an implicit threat. The man in the white shirt, your first guest and confirmed human, is taken away, his fate unknown. Next comes a man in a suit, philosophizing about how this crisis has revealed society's true nature, claiming that nobody is pretending anymore. His unsettling rhetoric prompts you to deny him entry, prioritizing the safety of our current guests over the risk of admitting someone with such a disturbing worldview. The night takes a more poignant turn with the return of the neighbor's daughter, now orphaned by the violence you witnessed through your window. Her grief adds another layer of moral weight to our role as gatekeeper. How could you turn away a child who has just lost everything? We grant her shelter, accepting the responsibility that comes with protecting a minor in this increasingly dangerous world. Two more visitors test our judgment before the night ends. First, a man in a plaid jacket sharing a story about visitors stealing his gun, but something about his tale rings false, leading us to deny him entry. Finally, a woman in a long yellow shirt appears, claiming FEMA evicted her from her home. Though you turn her away, her parting warning about the yellow ones, the FEMA agents, adds another layer of uncertainty to our understanding of who can be trusted. As we return to bed, the night's events have radically altered the power dynamics in our small sanctuary. The armed FEMA agent's visit suggests a new phase of official intervention, whilst the burning of our neighbour's house eliminates what had been our one connection to the pre-crisis world. The addition of an orphan child to our household raises the stakes of our role as protector, even as the lines between authority, threat, and victim become increasingly blurred. Day 6 brings what seems like a gift. The morning broadcast finally offers an almost foolproof method of identifying visitors. Photographs, and they will reveal their true nature through extreme blurring. Armed with this knowledge, we begin what will become our final day of inspections. The shirt man, who we'd previously spared despite his bloodshot eyes, reveals his true nature through the camera's lens. He attempts to escape, but is cut short by our shotgun, his body disintegrating into a bloody blur, a scene made more horrific by its proximity to the neighbor's orphaned child in the kitchen. The rest of our guests, the child, the surgeon, and the widow with her decomposing husband in the bathroom, pass their final inspections. There's a grim irony in how this confirmation of their humanity comes just as the outside world reaches its nadir of inhumanity. Your final night begins with window checks that paint a portrait of total societal collapse. Our neighbour's house stands as a burnt husk, a monument to lost normalcy. The soldier's head from yesterday has been mounted on a stick and burned, a grotesque trophy of the intruder's victory over authority. The road has gained a new decoration. Alongside the eviscerated soldiers lies a lynched body hanging from an electrical pole, presumably a visitor who fell victim to mob justice, showing how humanity's response to the crisis has become barely distinguishable from the visitor's brutality. The FEMA agent returns, the first knock on our door. His previous promise about returning our first guest transformed into vague assurances about rest. He takes the surgeon, adding another name to the list of those who may never return. But it's the next visitor who truly signals the end times. The intruder returns, speaking cryptically about whether we trust the one in the suit, before delivering his final prophecy. These are the last days and dogs shall rule the world. His words suggest a transformation more fundamental than mere invasion or apocalypse, perhaps the replacement of one form of existence with another. The demo's final visitor is the same cryptic observer from earlier nights, the one who never sought shelter. His survival without sanctuary suggests there might be other paths through this crisis, other ways of existing in this transformed world. But for you and your remaining guests, the widow and the orphan child, the path forward is clear. You barricade the windows and doors, sealing ourselves away from a world that has become unrecognizable. The credits confirm that our remaining guests are human, but this victory rings hollow. We've survived, yes, but at what cost? The demo ends with us having become exactly what the crisis demanded. A suspicious, violent guardian of a tiny packet of humanity, sealed away from a world where dogs, whether literal or metaphorical, now rule. Picture yourself in that house one final time. The sun burns mercilessly outside, your shotgun rests heavy in your hands, and the faces around you, both friendly and suspicious, wait for your next decision. In these final moments of "No, I am not a human," every choice you've made, every life you've taken or spared, crystallizes into one of several possible futures. Each potential ending writes a different conclusion to your story of survival, but more importantly, each reveals a different truth about what humanity means when pushed to its absolute limits. The paths before you branch like fracturing glass. Will you become the ruthless guardian, your hands stained with the blood of visitors, but your humans safe behind barricaded windows? Or will you paranoia consume you, sending you into exile under that scorching sun? Perhaps you'll maintain your trust in human nature until the moment sharp teeth tear into your flesh, or choose to keep your hands clean by helping no one at all. These aren't just different outcomes, they're different answers to the fundamental question. What price are you willing to pay for survival? And what pieces of your humanity are you prepared to sacrifice along the way? The first ending, which we will call the Vigilant Guardian, occurs when you successfully identify and eliminate all visitors while protecting genuine humans. You and your surviving guests barricade yourselves in the house, creating a fortress of confirmed humanity. This ending suggests that while survival is possible, but only through constant vigilance and the willingness to commit violence in defense of our sanctuary. It's perhaps the most conventionally successful ending, but it comes at the cost of becoming the very thing you fear, someone capable of killing without hesitation. The second ending, Exile, results from excessive killing, when paranoia leads to the murder of innocent humans. Being cast out into the scorching sun serves as poetic justice for those who let fear override humanity. This ending suggests that becoming too zealous in your protection against monsters risks turning you into something worse than what you're fighting against. The third ending, Infiltration, occurs when you fail to identify and eliminate visitors among your guests. Your death at their hands serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of naive trust in a world where appearances deceive. Yet there's an irony here. In trying to maintain your humanity by avoiding violence, you enable the very forces that seek to destroy it. The fourth ending, Clean Hands, might initially seem like the most moral choice. Taking in no visitors means no blood on your hands. You and your guests find relief in having avoided violence entirely. However, this ending raises uncomfortable questions about the morality of inaction. How many genuine humans did you condemn to death by refusing to risk helping anyone? The fifth ending, which acknowledges a premature completion, serves as a meta-commentary on the nature of survival horror games. It suggests that rushing through such weighty moral decisions without proper consideration misses the point entirely. Finally, there's the game over scenario that occurs when you admit to being alone during the intruder's visit. This ending, where you simply disappear without a trace, speaks to the fundamental vulnerability of isolation. It reinforces the game's central premise that survival requires community, even if that community brings risk. What makes these endings particularly fascinating is how they reject simple moral categorization. There is no unambiguously good ending. Each represents a different kind of compromise with an impossible situation. The successful ending still requires you to become a killer. The moral ending of taking no one in might actually represent the greatest abdication of moral responsibility. Even the ending where you eliminate all threats and save all humans comes with the heavy knowledge that you've had to become something frightening to achieve it. Together, these endings form a complex statement about survival morality and human nature under extreme pressure. They suggest that the real horror isn't just the visitors or the burning sun, but the impossible choices we face when our moral frameworks collide with the imperative to survive. One of the most fascinating aspects of No, I Am Not a Human is how it refuses to definitively explain its monsters. The visitors remain an enigma throughout the demo, their true nature carefully obscured behind multiple possible interpretations. The ambiguity isn't a narrative weakness, it's central in the game's exploration of humanity and otherness. Let's examine the evidence that the game provides. Visitors emerge from underground, possess perfect teeth, often have dirt under their fingernails, and appear blurred in photographs, whilst being able to perfectly mimic human form while maintaining subtle, wrong qualities. The Intruder, their apparent leader or most evolved form, demonstrates both superhuman strength and an almost omniscient awareness of human presence. Yet, what's most interesting is how the game presents multiple possible frameworks for understanding these beings. The first possibility is that the visitors represent an evolutionary response to the solar crisis. Their emergence coinciding with the sun's transformation suggests adaptation. Perhaps they're what humanity becomes when forced to hide underground from solar radiation. The perfect teeth could indicate accelerated healing or biological optimization, while their photo-blurred appearance might be an evolved defense mechanism against the sun's deadly rays. This interpretation is supported by the cashier girl's gradual realization of her own visitor nature, suggesting the transformation might be happening to humans in real time. Alternatively, the visitors could be extraterrestrial invaders taking advantage of the solar crisis. Their underground origin could indicate a long-dormant alien presence awakened by the sun's transformation. The perfect teeth and blurred photographs might be imperfections in their mimicry of human form, while their strength and resilience could be attributes of their alien biology. The Intruder's cryptic statements about dogs ruling the world could hint at a planned replacement of human civilization with something altogether alien. However, The most intriguing interpretation frames the visitors as a manifestation of societal collapse. Notice how the game's authority figures, the news broadcasts, FEMA, the military, all attempt to rationalize and normalize the visitors. They're described as ill individuals rather than monsters, their perfect teeth and blurred photos reduced to medical symptoms rather than supernatural signs. This mirrors how societies often attempt to process breakdown through bureaucratic frameworks, trying to maintain order even as reality becomes increasingly inexplicable. There's also a psychological reading possible. The visitors might represent the erasure of individual identity under extreme pressure. Notice how many of them seem to lose their memories or sense of self. The perfect teeth becomes a symbol of artificial conformity, while the blurred photographs suggest the loss of authentic selfhood. The intruder's ability to know whether you're alone could represent paranoia made manifest, the feeling that someone always knows your vulnerabilities. What makes these interpretations particularly powerful is how they all support the game's central themes about human nature under pressure. Whether the visitors are evolved humans, aliens, a social collapse made flesh, or psychological phenomena, they force characters to confront questions about what makes us human. The process of identifying visitors, checking teeth, examining nails, taking photographs, becomes a ritual of defining humanity through exclusion. This ambiguity serves another purpose. It mirrors the player's own uncertainty when making life or death decisions. Just as we can never be entirely sure what the visitors are, we can never be entirely sure we're making the right choice when we raise that shotgun. The visitor's unclear nature forces us to confront how we justify violence against those we define as other, even when that definition rests on shaky ground. The intruder stands apart from other visitors in both presence and purpose. While other visitors attempt to infiltrate and blend in, the intruder makes no such pretense. His appearances mark pivotal moments in the narrative, each encounter escalating the sense of impending doom. But looking deeper, his character appears to be carefully constructed with specific cultural and religious symbolism in mind. Let's examine his physical presentation first. Unnaturally pale, shirtless, with strange folds in his skin that seems too big for him, and arms described as freakishly long and skinny. His most distinctive feature, his perpetual grin filled with perfect white teeth, a characteristic that transforms from unnerving to terrifying as we learn more about visitor identification. The developers confirmed he was nicknamed Skinwalker, alluding to his true nature as an entity wearing human form like an ill-fitting suit. His behavior pattern is ritualistic. He tests humans with specific questions, knows truths that should be unknowable, and appears at windows like a dark reflection of traditional Slavic customs of checking on neighbors. His violence is performative, not just killing soldiers, but displaying their dismembered bodies, turning military authority into macabre theater. But it's his final prophecy that provides the most fascinating insight into his true nature. His declaration that dogs rule the world and only dogs will be here references Russian punk poet Yegor Letev's work, but in the context of Slavic religious tradition, it takes on deeper meaning. In Slavic folklore, dogs often represent liminal creatures, neither fully domesticated nor fully wild, capable of seeing spirits and protecting against dark forces while sometimes serving as vessels for demons. The intruder's role as an almost anti-Christ figure becomes clearer when we examine his methods. He doesn't merely kill, he corrupts. His presence forces humans to become more monstrous in their attempts to survive. He orchestrates situations that push people to betray their own humanity, much like how the biblical Antichrist is said to make evil appear reasonable and necessary. Consider his signature question, are you alone? On the surface, it's a predator's query about vulnerability. But it's also a theological question. Are you separated from humanity? Have you isolated yourself from the community that defines human existence? His ability to know the truth of your answers suggests a type of omniscience, but it's a dark mirror of divine knowledge, used not for salvation, but for selection of victims. His relationship with other visitors is particularly telling. While they hide their nature, he flaunts his inhumanity. While they infiltrate homes, he orchestrates larger events. He acts less like a military leader and more like a dark priest, conducting a terrible transformation of the world. The burning of our neighbor's house, the display of mutilated soldiers, the gradual revelation of visitors among trusted friends. These aren't just acts of violence, they're a kind of dark liturgy. This reading is supported by the game's post-Soviet setting, where religious and supernatural themes often intertwine with social collapse. The Intruder emerges as society's systems fall. Both governmental, FEMA military, and social, trust and community. He's not just leading an invasion, he's presiding over an apocalyptic transformation where humanity's attempts to maintain order become instruments of its own destruction. The Intruder's final words about dogs ruling the world take on new meaning in this context. It's not just about the replacement of humans with visitors, it's about the triumph of the liminal, the breaking down of categories that define human civilization. In Slavic folklore, the end times are often marked not by a single catastrophic event, but by a gradual inversion of natural order. Exactly the kind of transformation the Intruder appears to be orchestrating. This interpretation adds another layer to the game's central question about maintaining humanity. The Intruder doesn't just test whether you survive, he tests whether anything recognizably human can survive when all systems of human order and meaning have been undermined. His true horror lies not in his violence, but in his role as architect of a world where being human becomes either impossible or meaningless. In this nightmare world, FEMA emerges as one of its most unsettling elements, not because of any overt horror, but because of the mounting uncertainty about their true nature and purpose. Their presence in the game serves as a masterclass in how institutional authority can become a source of terror when society begins to collapse. FEMA's introduction through news broadcasts initially seems reassuring. Finally, an official response to the crisis. They arrive in their distinctive hazmat suits, promising order amidst chaos, offering quarantine zones for the ill, and providing scientific explanations for the visitors' characteristics. Their presence suggests that somehow, somewhere, the machinery of government continues to function. But the game slowly unravels this comfort. Consider how FEMA's role evolves. They begin by establishing quarantine zones, then progress to forcibly evacuating neighborhoods, and finally to making selective extractions of individuals from private homes. Each step follows a certain bureaucratic logic while becoming increasingly sinister. The game never shows us their quarantine zones, never reveals what happens to those they take. Their authority exists in a void of accountability. A crucial detail emerges in our fifth night encounter. The FEMA agent who comes to our door carries a gun, unlike his colleagues. This small detail carries almost enormous implications. Why would a medical response team need armed members? More disturbingly, this armed agent's appearance coincides with the Intruder's increased activity. The game never explicitly connects these dots, but the implication hovers. Have some FEMA agents been replaced by visitors? Or were they always working towards some darker purpose? The middle-aged woman we encounter provides a chilling perspective on FEMA's operations. She reveals that when they evacuated her neighborhood, they split the residents, taking half the tents while abandoning the rest. This systematic division of humanity echoes historical atrocities, where bureaucratic processes masked systematic elimination. FEMA's language throughout the game deserves particular attention. They consistently frame the visitor crisis in medical terms, speaking of rehabilitation, observation, and testing. This medicalization of horror serves two purposes. It makes the inexplicable seem manageable, and it provides a framework for control that people are conditioned to accept. Who questions a quarantine during a crisis? The game's most subtle commentary on FEMA comes through their relationship with photography. While they provide the information about using photos to identify visitors, we never see FEMA agents themselves being photographed. They instead remain behind their masks and suits, implementing identification protocols they seem exempt from following. This leads to perhaps the game's most disturbing suggestion, that FEMA represents not just institutional authority, but institutional authority as a form of horror itself. Their procedures, paperwork, and protocols don't combat the crisis, they facilitate it. Every piece of official information they provide about identifying visitors also serves as a tool for dividing communities, spreading paranoia, and justifying violence. By the demo's end, FEMA emerges as something more terrifying than either an ineffectual bureaucracy system or a malevolent conspiracy. They represent how institutional systems, even while collapsing, can maintain just enough authority to make horror seem official, to give atrocity the veneer of procedure. Whether they're actively working with the visitors or simply creating conditions that help the visitors thrive become almost irrelevant. The effect is the same. This portrayal resonates particularly strongly in the game's post-Soviet setting, where memories of institutional authority becoming instrument of terrors remain fresh. FEMA's yellow suits become a uniform as meaningful as any military garb, their quarantine zones as ominous as any prison camp. They represent how quickly systems meant to protect humanity can become mechanisms for processing its destruction. No, I Am Not a Human isn't just a game about identifying monsters. It's a masterclass in psychological horror that forces players to confront the monsters we might become. The game's true brilliance lies in how it systematically breaks down the psychological defenses, using both mechanical systems and narrative devices to push us towards moral compromise. The game's genius lies in how it builds paranoia gradually, almost reasonably. It begins with simple signs, perfect teeth, dirty fingernails, markers that seem objective and manageable. But as the game progresses, these signs become increasingly ambiguous. The cashier girl's perfect teeth might be dental work. The bar guy's bloodshot eyes could be from crying. Each sign of visitor identity could also be a sign of human suffering, forcing you to question not just the other's humanity, but your own capacity for judgment. Consider how the game teaches you to distrust your own instincts. The neighbor's daughter appears innocent, but her photo comes out blurred. The surgeon has two pupils in one eye. Not a visitor sign, but unsettling nonetheless. The game deliberately muddles the waters between visitor characteristics and human variation, marking every interaction an exercise in doubt. The collapse of social order isn't just backdrop, it's a psychological weapon the game uses against both characters and players. Watch how social norms erode. First you're checking people's teeth like animals, then you're photographing them without consent. Finally, you're pointing a shotgun at them based on dental records. The game makes these violations of normal social behavior feel necessary, even rational. The widow's story perfectly encapsulates this breakdown. She carries her dead husband's corpse because she can't trust anyone else to help her bury him properly. Her refusal to abandon his body isn't just grief. It's a desperate attempt to maintain one last piece of social normalcy, proper burial, in a world where such norms are rapidly dissolving. The game's moral choices are insidious because they're incremental. You don't start by choosing to murder. You start by choosing to check teeth, then to take photos, then to raise your gun. Each step feels justified by the last, creating a psychological momentum towards violence that mirrors real-world patterns of moral compromise. The bar guy's character arc demonstrates this perfectly. He begins by rationalizing his expulsion from previous shelter, then justifies increasingly hostile behavior, until finally his paranoia about visitors becomes indistinguishable from the threat they pose. His psychology deteriorates in parallel with the players, making him both a mirror and a warning. The game's energy management system serves as a brilliant metaphor for how survival pressure affects psychological state. You can't sleep until your energy is depleted, forcing you to either engage with your guests, risking trust, or drink beer, potentially clouding judgment. This mechanical system creates a psychological pressure cooker, where every interaction costs precious resources. The intruder's question returns once more. Are you alone? And it becomes more than a threat. It's a psychological test. Being alone means death, but company brings risk. This forces players to constantly weigh their survival instincts against their capacity for trust, a psychological balancing act that becomes increasingly difficult as the game progresses. Perhaps the game's most disturbing psychological insight is how it reveals human nature, not as something that breaks under pressure, but as something that adapts in horrifying ways. The visitors might be monsters, but the real horror is how quickly humans create systems to process and normalize monstrosity. FEMA's quarantine zones, your own identification protocols, the community's acceptance of violence, all represent human nature's capacity to bureaucratize horror. Through these psychological elements, No, I Am Not a Human achieves something remarkable. It makes players complicit in the horror, not through dramatic choices, but through small reasonable decisions that accumulate into monstrosity. The true psychological terror isn't that we might meet monsters, it's that we might become them while believing that we're doing the right thing. As we've seen, the demo of No, I Am Not a Human accomplishes something remarkable. It creates a complete haunting experience while promising even more to come. Through its careful balance of mechanical and narrative elements, the game transforms a simple premise, identifying visitors among survivors, into a complex meditation on trust, humanity, and survival. The storytelling particularly shines in its restraint. Rather than overwhelming players with exposition, it allows horror to emerge naturally from simple interactions, checking teeth, examining fingernails, taking photographs. Each action carries weight not because the game tells us it should, but because we understand the terrible consequences of being wrong. The way it weaves together personal horror with societal collapse, individual paranoia with institutional control, demonstrates a sophistication rarely seen in horror gaming. What makes this demo particularly effective is how it innovates within the horror genre. While other games have explored themes of infiltration and paranoia, No, I'm Not a Human distinguishes itself through its focus on the psychological cost of survival. The energy management system, the necessity of maintaining human guests, the careful balance between trust and suspicion. These mechanics don't just serve the gameplay, they reinforce the narrative's central themes. In the broader context of horror gaming, this demo stakes out unique territory. While games like Among Us explore social deduction and Papers, Please examines bureaucratic complicity, No, I Am Not a Human combines these elements with deep psychological horror. Its post-Soviet setting adds cultural specificity to universal themes, while its religious undertones, particularly in the Intruder's role as an antichrist figure, give its horror metaphysical weight. Looking forward to the full release, the promised features are intriguing. The expansion from 12 to 54 potential guests, the addition of randomized visitor signs, and the promise of a 3D cat companion suggests a game that will build substantially on the demo's foundation. The randomization element particularly excites me. It ensures that memorization won't replace genuine engagement with the game's moral choices. However, what truly makes me anticipate the full release is how the demo hints at deeper mysteries. The true nature of the visitors, FEMA's actual agenda, the intruder's ultimate purpose. These questions remain tantalizingly unresolved. The demo demonstrates that the developers know how to handle ambiguity without frustrating players, suggesting these mysteries will pay off in satisfying ways. The game's relevance to our current moment can't be overstated. In an era of increasing social isolation, institutional distrust, and widespread anxiety about the future, its themes resonate powerfully. The way it examines how crisis affects communities, how fear can transform systems of protection into instruments of control, speaks directly to contemporary concerns. What we've seen in this demo suggests that No, I Am Not a Human could represent a significant evolution in horror gaming. It shows how games can explore complex social and psychological themes without sacrificing engagement or atmospheric horror. Its unique blend of mechanical systems and narrative development creates something that feels both experimental whilst also being accessible. If the full release can build on these strengths, while expanding its scope, we might be looking at a landmark title in psychological horror gaming. The demo's success lies not just in its immediate effectiveness, but in how it promises even deeper exploration of its theme. Perhaps what makes this game truly special is how it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. In its world of burning suns and perfect smiles, of yellow hazmat suits and blurred photographs, we find a mirror of our own capacities, both for survival and for monstrosity. Each choice we make in this game, every person we save or condemn, each suspicion we harbor or dismiss, reveals something about who we might become when the structures of civilization begin to crack. As we wait for the full release, we're left with questions that haunt us not because they're unanswered, but because we're afraid of the answers. In asking us to distinguish human from visitor, the game ultimately forces us to question what humanity means, and whether we can preserve it in the face of overwhelming pressure to survive at any cost. The sun may be burning in the world of No, I Am Not a Human, but its light reveals truths we might prefer to leave in darkness. Sometimes, as the game suggests, the real horror isn't in discovering monsters among us, it's in discovering the monsters within ourselves. Oh God, oh God. Well, thank you. Welcome back to another video. If everything went to plan, this video came out maybe a week, maybe a bit less than a week after the Darkwood video. So, you know, absolutely, absolutely grinding out these videos. I mean, I've cut down on my hours. I work at my actual job to focus solely on this. So hopefully you all enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please let me know down below what actually like videos you want me to cover in the future, what games, because I did this because it was shorter and the new full release is coming up soon. So basically, like, you know, I'm gonna recover this when it fully comes out. Obviously, only if you want to. Let me know down below if that's something you want to be seeing. I probably will anyway because a bit of a content drought. That's why if any of you have any games you'd like me to cover, just let me know. The only two games I have left that I was thinking about covering is Slay the Princess, obviously, if you looked at any of my community polls, it's been there for a while. It's just really long compared to most of the other games. Like Darkwood took me a while. I had to work on it while working on other videos, so. But, and Amnesia the Bunker, which is a bit different from what I'd normally cover. I don't know why, it just feels totally different, but it's made by the same guys who made Soma, which I also did a video on, so, you know, should be good. But yeah, if you did enjoy the video, please make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. I try to make the videos as good as I can, but at the end of the day, it's just me. So sorry if the videos aren't like as high quality as they could be, but if I want to maintain a semi, you know, consistent release schedule, then, you know, the quality isn't always going to be super amazing, ultra edited, but I hope you do enjoy anyway. If you do want to support the channel further, do consider joining the Patreon or becoming a member of the channel. Obviously, completely optional, but if you do, obviously, like I said at the beginning, you get early access to videos and help decide what the future topics are going to be about. Completely optional, though. It's just like there if you wanted to support the channel further. And if you want to just follow my Twitter, then you can. I don't really post that much on it, but when I do, it's generally behind the scenes stuff. I go see my cat over there. I've got a pretty cool cat. But yeah, I hope you did enjoy this video, and do let me know down below what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.